I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party. If you can no longer stomach the direction that the so-called woke Democratic Party ideologues are taking our country, then I invite you to join me.
Tulsi Gabbard announced what honestly most common sense, rational Americans already knew. She's a Republican. She has made it pretty clear in various ways in the recent past, including hosting Tucker Carlson's show when he was out, constantly rubbing elbows with all sorts of nefarious figures in the right wing, criticizing Democrats for what Republicans engage in far more than Democrats do, and I'll make that case with the receipts in just a moment. But I love this because it's this self-important announcement that she's leaving the Democratic Party over the one thing that Republicans have decided to make their politics about, which is anti-wokeness. That is the full extent of their political beliefs, anti-wokeness. That's all they talk about, that's all they draw attention to. They've got nothing else. So without further ado, why don't we take a look at the entirety of her videos and do a breakdown just to point out the insane hypocrisy of what she claims Democrats are up to while completely providing cover for the right wing.
I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers who are driven by cowardly wokeness.
Elitist cabal is interesting framing, okay? Because she loves to hang out with elitists. I mean, she's good friends with Tucker Carlson, good friends with, well, before he passed away, Sheldon Adelson, hangs out with all sorts of elitists, to say the least. And in fact, if you just kind of take a look at the details on what she says about warmongers, the elitist cabal of warmongers, she kind of fits in that category. What do I mean? Well, Mrs. Aloha loves to pretend like she's the peace candidate. At least when she was running for president, that's what she kind of branded herself as. I'm all about aloha. I do yoga videos. I go surfing, and I'm anti-war. I'm anti-regime change war. But for anyone who takes even a moment to read into her congressional record, her past statements and various interviews that she's done, she's not the anti-war candidate. Far from it. Let me give you the receipts, because that's what matters on this show. The actual evidence to back up the point that we're trying to make. Fact of the matter is, she's very much in favor of war. I'll give you, I don't know, several examples. Great article that was written by Max Van Dyke in International Policy Digest. Good summary here. During an interview with the Hawaii Tribune Herald, Gabbard described her views on foreign policy with the following: when it comes to the war against terrorists, I'm a hawk. When it comes to counterproductive wars of regime change, I'm a dove. Now, the war on terror, as you all can imagine, is very vague. You could describe anything as a war on terror. I mean, anyone could say that we're engaging in helping the Ukrainians against Russia due to Russia's terror. We're waging a war on terror against Russia as they're terrorizing Ukraine. You can use that statement to fit into any international conflict. So it was intentionally vague because if you look at her record, there's all sorts of military funding that she's been in favor of, all sorts of interventions she's been in favor of. It's been pretty incredible. Elaborating on her views on the war on terror during an appearance on NDTV, Gabbard told an interviewer that the US has a responsibility to, quote, root out evil wherever it is, to defeat Islamic extremism. One might easily mistake this as a quote from Dick Cheney. And that's exactly right, exactly right. It is our responsibility to root out evil wherever it is. Now, what she's referring to is Muslims. If you look at her record, she also seems to, have some pretty serious Islamophobic beliefs. But I'll continue. I'll give you some more receipts for this warmonger who lives in a glass house, yet is throwing stones at the Democrats. By the way, as if the Republican Party isn't full of warmongers. Now let's just keep it real. The Democratic Party has deep issues. I am not erasing that. I'm not providing cover for that. That is something we talk about on this show on a regular basis. My issue with Tulsi Gabbard is her pretending that she's this peace-loving individual who doesn't want these interventions abroad. She absolutely has been supportive of these interventions. But more importantly, as she's attacking Democrats, she's providing cover for Republicans not only engaging in the same bad behavior, but doing so in a far more extreme way. Really, you're gonna pretend like the Republican Party is the peaceful anti-war party? Are you insane? Let me give you more. According to a 2018 article from The Intercept, Gabbard again doubled down on her support for drone strikes in the Middle East to fight terror. Let's pause for a second. Let's come to me. Go back to TYT's YouTube page, Facebook page, wherever you watch your content. Go back to the archives and watch our commentary about President Barack Obama's expansion of the drone war. We were always incredibly critical of that. But while we were critical, Tulsi Gabbard doubled down on that policy. She liked that policy, she liked that expansion. Let me give you more. She said, with these terror cells, for example, yes, I still believe that the right approach to take is these quick strike forces, surgical strikes in and out very quickly, no long-term deployment, no long-term occupation, to get rid of the threat that extremists and then get out. And the very limited use of drones in those situations where our military is not able to get in without creating an unacceptable level of risk. That is the exact line of thinking that Obama used in his expansion of a drone war that killed untold numbers of civilians, innocent individuals who were not members of any insurgent group, who were not part of any terrorist cell. Just innocent people, in some cases, as they were mourning their loved ones who had died as a result of our terror against them. Children, women, people celebrating at a wedding. Those were the quick drone strikes that we engaged in. The same drone strikes that Tulsi Gabbard is super supportive of in that comment. Let me give you more. Oh, there's so much more, guys. You getting tired of this? Because I love it. All it took was just a moment for everyone to sit their asses down and read about her. Just read about her. Look at her congressional record. But there were so many people who somehow were gullible enough to think that this woman was representative of peace and anti-imperialism. What a joke. Let me give you more. Gabbard also voted to increase the defense budget in 2018. She actually did so a few times. In fact, Gabbard has a bit of a history of voting against measures that would reduce military spending. For example, in 2013, Gabbard voted against measures to save money on aircraft carriers, reduce funding for submarines, cut wasteful spending, take steps toward closing Guantanamo Bay, and reducing Pentagon spending. She voted against all that, knowing full well that there's a lot of waste with taxpayer money being funneled to private military contractors. So she was very much part of a system that has redistributed wealth from the bottom to the top. I'm not done yet though. There's a little bit more, just a little bit. In 2014, Gabbard voted against an amendment that would prohibit US combat operations in Iraq, and against an amendment that would prevent funds being used for the 2002 AUMF in Iraq. The following year, Gabbard voted against reducing the number of required aircraft carriers the Navy was required to keep, cutting nuclear missile program funding, and a continuing resolution introduced by Representative Jim McGovern to remove US troops from Iraq and Syria. That's her record. I mean, sounds like a warmonger to me. If it talks like a warmonger, walks like a warmonger, it's definitely a warmonger. And that warmonger is throwing stones outside of her massive glass house. Then in 2016, Gabbard voted thrice, 3 times, against repealing or blocking funding for the 2001 AUMF, which is what currently gives American presidents a blank check for starting more endless wars. She's a fraud. And fact of the matter is she's also a coward, because I knew all this about her years ago. I was trying to warn the audience about her in 2019. And I was attacked viciously for it, by the way. And when she realized that I had the audacity to just read her congressional record and understand how she voted, she had her team write into TYT as we were quickly approaching an interview that Cenk and I were supposed to do with her, to let us know that she would not be doing the interview unless I was excluded from it, because she's a freaking coward who can't even stand by her own goddamn record. Let's hear more from the liar.
Who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution, who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, who demonize the police but protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans.
God-given freedoms? So what about the people who don't believe in God in a country that has a separation of church and state? And what about the fact that we're currently grappling with a rise of Christian nationalism in this country, a rise in individuals who don't respect our First Amendment, which specifically states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. What about that? And while she is going after Democrats for doing away with our freedoms, after Republicans successfully stripped women of their bodily autonomy, you should also keep in mind that you have Republicans openly stating that they don't respect the Constitution and they certainly don't respect separation of church and state. They want to force, yes, force their religious beliefs on everyone in the country. Don't believe me? We've got some evidence on that too. Let's watch.
The church is supposed to direct the government. The government is not supposed to direct the church. That is not how our founding fathers intended it. And I'm tired of this separation of church and state junk.
Again, there is no separation of church and state. It's a fabrication, it's a fiction, it's not in the Constitution.
But Democrats are the problem, right? It's the Democrats. Democrats are the ones that are doing away with people's freedom. Just yesterday, Congresswoman Marjorie Greene talked about how we are in the best position to reverse same-sex marriage in this country. How's that for freedom? But Tulsi Gabbard loves it, because if you look at her past, she's also anti-gay marriage. I mean, this is who she's been. And this attempt to rebrand herself as a Republican is hilarious, because she's always been a right-winger. It's just, unfortunately, some people fell for this charade that she was engaged in. Final part of her video that I found so laughable had to do with corruption, actually. So let's watch that.
I believe in a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not. Instead, it stands for a government that is of, by, and for the powerful elite.
Now, she's right that the Democratic Party, corporate Democrats in particular, are taking campaign donations from corporatists, from individuals who have destroyed our economic system and have fueled the inequality that we're seeing in this country right now. That's why Democrats, one of their biggest mistakes was moving further and further away from average working Americans. They used to represent blue collar workers. They used to represent workers in general in this country. But the FDR days are over for the Democratic Party, and that's a huge mistake. So I will grant her that point. But to make that point while completely ignoring the reality of corruption among Republicans is hilarious. Does anyone really think that Republicans are the party by the people, for the people? Really? I know they're using all this phony, surface level populist lingo, but why don't we take a look at who funds them? Let's start with the 2020 election, the last major general election. man, Republican billionaires got real active, real active. Sheldon Adelson, who fortunately died in January of 2021, broke his own spending records, doling out $120 million to GOP, that means Republican congressional super PACs, $90 million to a pro-Trump super PAC, and about another $8 million to other conservative causes and candidates. That's interesting. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard, from what I've read about her, is actually very familiar with Sheldon Adelson. Here's a tweet from Rabbi Shmuley with Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii and Miriam Adelson at our gala dinner last Thursday. Yeah, she loved to, get real cozy with these individuals. That was a tweet from May 9th of 2016. We've got more. Hedge fund heavyweight Ken Griffin, a Mitt Romney supporter in 2012, didn't donate directly to Donald Trump's campaign in 2016 or 2020. Instead, he focused on Congress, dumping $37 million into a super PAC supporting Senate Republicans and another $10 million to a group backing House Republicans over the last 2 years. Wow, that really seems like a party by the people and for the people. There's more. Of course there's more. There's so much more. The richest man in private equity, Steven Schwartzman, put $35 million into a super PAC called the Senate Leadership Fund supporting Republican senators. He also gave $2 million to a group supporting one particular Republican senator, Susan Collins of Maine. Former President Trump also got some love, with committees that support him receiving $3.7 million. And I can't help myself, I just wanna make sure you guys get the receipts, right? Because I'm just a dumb girl who doesn't know what I'm talking about. I have to be dogpiled for months and months and months until people realize what I'm talking about is actually based on evidence that I present on the show. But let me give you one more piece of evidence. Georgia mega donor Bernard Marcus donated $10 million to a super PAC that ran a slew of anti-Biden ads in the run-up to the election and put $5.8 million toward a super PAC focused on GOP Senate races. Marcus's co-founder from Home Depot, Arthur Blank, supported Biden in 2020, but Marcus spent more than 30 times as much money on Trump as Blank did on Biden. There's plenty of corruption to go around. To erase the bad behavior or provide cover for the bad behavior of right-wing politicians while attacking Democrats makes it clear that homegirl's got an agenda. But what I want you guys to understand is this agenda is not new. It's been here for a while now. And rather than immediately having a knee-jerk negative reaction to someone who's trying to warn you about who someone really is, especially a politician who's seeking power, maybe take a look at the evidence that's presented and make a judgment call instead of getting offended that your preconceived notions have been challenged. That's all I ask.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.